Hello everyone and welcome back to our podcast series. We are still covering Teams and Contact Center together within the UK public sector. In this episode, we're going to be touching on analytics and insights and ultimately how that can help you make better decisions. I'm Jack Carr and today I'm joined again by
Tom Hunter,
Dan Lloyd,
Robert Jones.
Thanks for joining me, guys. So when we look at what Contact Center gives us in the way of analytics and insights, what insights might we get? What data do we need to help us see that data, understand it in a way that isn't just presented in terms of call logs, average time handling? What does it give us?
Yeah, there's a lot more now available to people outside of the call logs and sort of the KPIs that people measure, and it really uncovers why people are contacting you, and when you need to know why and how you can make operational decisions based on these. And it gives you kind of two flavors. One is a tactical one, so is there a particular topic that people are calling about? Is there a reason why there's so many SMSs coming in? When's it busy? Where do I need to move my agent? So that's a tactical reason why we look at these analytics and insights. There's also a strategic plan. So how do I predict what's going to happen if I make this change? How do I know what's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 weeks in order for me to start staffing up or bring in a new channel or do something different? So that's why it's important to have analytics and insights within the contact center. Where the data comes from, it's really very wide and varied these days. Typically, you have a bolt-on reporting platform that sits on top of your ACD, and that will then give you call times and talk times, hold times. But now it goes a lot more deeper than that, and we can look at sentiment analysis. We can look at what words are being used, what pattern those words are being used, and then also look at other data. So does that result in a ticket being raised? What happens in your CRM? Does that person go and buy that? Which part of the website do they join before they come in there? And all that builds a big picture on how we look at people interacting with us as an organization.
And we've spoken about omni-channel before, but surely if we're able to combine all these different channels into a single platform, we're taking data from one platform, right? And we're not having to silo off our information to understand, well, people want this for web chat, people want this for email. These are when we're busy for social media. This is when we're getting a lot of phone calls. Having that in one platform surely makes a big difference to anyone whose role is actually involved with taking that data and turning it into something meaningful for the organization, right?
Yeah, it's huge because it comes from one platform. It's in one style, one way of looking at it. So it's easy then to manipulate into the data you actually need. So you can see if something happens on the phone calls, how does it affect other parts of the business and vice versa. And it's easy to work with because of the standard format.
And Tom and Robert, what are public sector organizations really looking for when a contact center gives you that analytics and insight to make those better decisions? What does that mean to the people who are actually contacting those organizations?
They're looking to see how productive their agents are. They're looking to see what the customer experience is looking like. And they're looking to see if there's any low-hanging fruit. How can they make service improvements and where can they make them?
Yeah, just to piggyback off what you said, Robert, I guess a good example would be something like clearing. Obviously, universities want to have the best quality candidates as well as obviously filling up the spaces, therefore getting more funding, etc., etc. So having those analytics, for example, especially students, things like your what's the word? The sentiment analysis.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sentiment analysis in that sort of regard. Ultimately, I think potentially students might be a bit more impressionable. They're obviously nervous. They're about to potentially move somewhere else. They want to be going somewhere that they think is friendly. So something like sentiment analysis could be the difference between getting someone amazing because you've dealt with them really, really well, really positively, and they've had a really positive experience on the phone or wherever it may be, or losing somebody because it's maybe been a bit of a dip in terms of the sort of interaction that they've had and the mood of the agent that they're speaking to. So little nuances like that are quite important in terms of, especially in that education sector.
Yeah, I think when you touch on sentiment analysis as well, it can work across the board. So if you can analyse when a citizen calls up, maybe in public sector or a resident in housing, and you can sense frustration or upset or anger inside their voices, and you can see which part of the process has caused that. Because nobody really wants to call the housing association or their council They want just to go around living their lives, pay their council tax, and have done so. If something does go wrong and they want a good service, and if that leads to frustration, and you can pick that up through sentiment analysis, you can see what that driver is, and then by making proactive changes, you can stop that event even happening.
You can also aid training for your agents and improve the performance of that agent. So especially for both new agents and also existing agents that have been in the field a while, it just helps with that continuation of their education and improvement of service, which ultimately leads to great service for all.
It's interesting you mentioned training and using analytics to quantify and qualify agent performance, because when I was a contact center manager, we used to do 2 calls per agent per month. Now we took over 5,500 calls a week, so the amount of calls we were actually checking was so minuscule, it's ridiculous. But that was a score that I put on my board chart. There you go, I'm 99% quality assured. In reality, with the complaints that come in, with the different repeat calls, that's not true. But if you've got to put physical resource in doing that listening, it's not practical to do much more than that. So using analytics, you can then do 100% of your calls, your emails, your SMSs, and have true understanding of what's happening in your contact.
You've taken the words out of my mouth there, because I was literally going to come in and say that it does it for you now. So you don't have to cherry pick which calls you're going to listen to. And also you get a better idea of what is really happening, because you might go and manually choose 2 really good calls or 2 really bad calls, but that actually isn't giving you a true picture of what really is happening in the real world. But with the analytics tool now and AI, it's actually looking at the whole base, and you can actually program it to pull calls for keywords. So for example, if someone's swearing or a tone or certain key phrases that are used, it is now all encompassing.
Yeah, and it's changing the role of the supervisor and also the quality analyst, because typically a supervisor checking calls or a QA checking calls will just be there to listen, fill in a spreadsheet and report back up. Now what you do is, you rightly say, you get given these calls and say, right, check this call because this is a particularly great call or a poor call. That person then can go and train that agent and give them the feedback they need, the support they need, the additional whatever it is that makes them better. And that's changing that role slightly and probably making it a bit more fulfilling, really.
Yeah, definitely. And again, if it's a great call, then recognition for it, a pat on the back, is really good for morale.
It's the worst thing in contact centers. They love listening to what was the worst complaint, what was the worst call. Why not just flip it on its head and go, okay, give me the most amazing call of today, and let me go and celebrate with that agent, and they did a fantastic job. And so often overlooked.
It's often that we need to, really hone in on agent well-being as well. With this sort of sentiment analysis, we can go a little bit further into this. I mean, if it just so happens by, bad fortune, one agent happens to get, some potentially abusive callers or just, not particularly nice things that they want to deal with in a short period of time, we can intervene in that sense, right? We can take them out of that environment where that might not be very good for them, and we can implement these tools by having the data ready on hand, not having the manual intervention that might have been there in legacy platforms.
It's a bit of a problem from hybrid working, Imagine you have a bad morning with the kids, you're up late, you're late for the bus, you've got to change the kid 3 times, you finally get to school, then you get to the office. The first thing you have to deal with is somebody who wants to complain. You may not give the best service you want to give because of the environment you've kind of come into that situation. As a supervisor, you can see that. You see someone slam the bag down or throw the keys, and you have a word with them, maybe go for a coffee before they start work. In a hybrid situation when you're working from home, you don't get to see that as a supervisor. You don't get that chance to put your arm around people and say, how are you feeling today? Everything's all right. Let's have a coffee before you start. So you can use sentiment analysis to also detect things like that and making sure your agents are okay at home.
I think we touched on it in one of the previous ones as well, around the well-being of agents and things like that. And I think with something like this, it's the speed of it as well. No one wants to be, like you say, have a bad morning that continues for the whole day. And if you can nip it in the bud straight away, more or less, or as quickly as possible, find out exactly why or what has happened on a call and analyze it in a way that would help and can be, one, used to train them, and 2, also used to train others as well and get the most out of the platform itself. It's definitely a really beneficial tool.
Ultimately, the agents can have a better experience at work. They're going to be more happy in their job, and the citizens are going to have a better experience as well. So it's a very important tool that we've got access to now, which is great.
And we don't need to do it reactively either, right? We have the options because we can flag that maybe, in in public sector, there's a good chance that either you very, very rarely contact these organizations, or you might contact them very frequently over one issue in a short period of time. And by using things like the sentiment analysis, we can flag that before they're actually connected to an agent, right? So we can brace them a little bit, understand that this might be a frustrated person. And that, you know, they get that visibility before they go into the call, and, you know, potentially they can handle it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, kind of a seamless plug for Cirrus. We have our customer happiness index, which flags to the agent before they answer the call. Yeah, so exactly right, Joe.
Exactly right. And, you know, public sector contact centers, we know that, and I know you've touched on it before in some of the other podcasts, but budgets are tight. It's across the board in the public sector. So making sure that you get the most out of your contact center, you know, when it comes to public funding is critical, right? We are seeing contact centers that need to justify some of the decision making, and one of the best ways that you can ever do that is by presenting data. Now, you need that to be not only accurate and up to date, but it needs to be digestible, right? That's a key thing, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is just touching on what we've already spoken about in a previous one. When, for example, you're going out to tender for a contact center and you do get the upper echelon of the contact center group, it's hard to differentiate, or not necessarily hard, but you need to differentiate yourself from something that everybody is offering. So if you can tell that story in such a way that, like you say, it's kind of the hidden benefits of it, where changing the way you work and doing something like the sentiment analysis, wherever it may be, flagging when you're incrementally increasing the happiness of the agents, etc., and basically getting training resources from that you wouldn't previously had, increasing the happiness of the customers themselves. That's kind of
what one thing that Tom can't remember me saying in a previous episode is it costs more money to provide bad service. Now I've told him this 5 times now, and he still can't remember it. So I'm going to So yeah, we're going to get there one day. But you're exactly right, Tom. You know, it does cost a lot more money to provide bad service. So by using this data well, you're going to improve the service for the agent, which ultimately makes sure they don't leave, they stay long tenure, their training's less. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits of that. But outside of the sentiment analysis, also the raw data itself, you know, so, you know, how can you reduce the handling time of a contact from 6 minutes to 5 minutes? Because, you know, making very small changes across the board will make huge differences, and data will give you where you need to look, but also measure your success of that as well, so you can start to see that benefit. And as Jack mentioned around the cost of that contact center, you know, always improving the service, making it more efficient is going to benefit overall.
Can we talk about knowledge assist? Because it's not just the reporting that the supervisors get, but it's also how data can assist the agents to do a better job, and also keep the repeat calls down, because knowledge assist will help the agents to be able to direct the call in the right direction, give consistent service to every caller for the same query. And it means that then that as they evolve on their journey as an agent, they're also building up their knowledge as well.
Yeah, exactly right. So once you understand why people are contacting you and you put the process in to deal with those situations, then that goes into a knowledge base that can be digested with agents through different ways. Either the standard way approach is that they can go and search for it using keywords, a bit like a Google search. This customer's calling like this, we'll go and find that process and talk them through it. Or you can introduce it to things like Cirrus Copilot, which will then listen to the call, read the email, read the SMS conversation, and then bring that knowledge article to the top and say, this is the question you need to ask, this is the process you need to follow. So, but that data is not always stored within inside Gamma or Cirrus or in the telecoms platform. That information's in a CRM, it's on a website, it's in a SharePoint drive. So, you know, you've got to try and clean that data up and give it access to that data.
But by giving the system, the platform, access to that data, you're actually arming your agents to be able to do a better service, which reduces your operating costs ultimately. So by spending a little money in the platform and choosing the right platform, you can then deliver better service to your customers, and also give your agents the ability to do their job properly.
Yeah, exactly right. What we're trying to do there is reducing the time it takes to recruit somebody and get them into the seat, and then get them to start. And then the next task is to get them to answer the queries. So if you can reduce that training time by having a really easy knowledge base with agent assist that brings the information to the forefront, that time's reduced. So you start feeling the benefit of bringing that person on. they then become skilled quicker, and because as a result, will probably end up enjoying doing their job a lot more. They then just staying a lot of time, so you're not going back to the beginning recruiting again.
That's right, because when you take on new people, it's quite telling. If people are going to stay in the job, they will stay past the 3-month period. But if they find it's very hard to onboard and get used to the contact center and be at the sharp end, then they're going to move away. But with Knowledge Assist, that will aid them to actually onboard much quicker. So it halves the onboarding time, and it also means that it's a good onboarding experience for that agent.
Exactly right.
Okay.
And while we want agents to stay for a long time, be fulfilled within their roles, we do see staff turnovers, right? So that knowledge around customer and or citizen inquiries, that's really important to keep that secure and keep it up to date, which is where we do, obviously build into CRM platforms.
Correct.
So when we talk about data, it's very easy to view it just in the way of ones and zeros. And yeah, if you get technical, it kind of is. But especially within public sector, we're talking about human beings, and sometimes the data held in accounts with those humans. It's sensitive in nature, right? How do we make sure that when we do all this great stuff, powerful things with AI and the analytics, how do we make sure that's being managed in a safe and secure way?
Yeah, definitely, Jack. So public sector organizations will deal with a wide breadth of different scenarios. Some of that will be transactional, can have a new blue bin, great. The other will be social care. There'll be child and adult welfare. There's a lot of sensitive data in there, which is valuable information for training agents and making sure you provide the right service to those citizens. But yeah, you're right. Where does that data go? And I think by having a true omnichannel platform, which keeps everything in one single place, you're not extracting data to go and manipulate it to get these reports. You're creating the reports internally inside that platform. Obviously, within Cirrus and Gamma, we take security and data privacy very, very serious. So we've got all our accreditations that we've kind of gone through before. So yeah, you can find out more by coming to talk to us about that. But yeah, it's vital that it stays in one place, doesn't need extracting, and can be used there. And if you add on the AI for that point of view, our Gen AI, which does integrate with ChatGPT, what we're not doing is putting it into the public domain. So it's not going and looking for information on the internet. It's looking at information that we want to provide it. So it keeps that really locked down and secure.
No, that's really good to hear. And in terms of sort of what AI can do, the automation of tasks is massive, right? I mean, making sure that agents are productive is clearly a key goal of many a contact center. Are we able to free them up for some of the more menial tasks, some of the things that are fairly easy to manage and maybe don't need that human touch?
I would imagine anything like transactional, like Dan mentioned, is something that an AI could easily take on. If it's a simple request for information, for example, or if it's can I have something, then yeah, I would imagine that AI would have no issue taking those sort of menial tasks on, giving the agents the opportunity or freeing them up to actually have the physical interactions with customers, whether voice, email, chat, whatever it may be.
This is the sound of another podcast, this does. Right? And we should do a whole podcast on all public sector organizations ready for AI.
Maybe we should.
I think AI can be used in many ways across many verticals and sectors. And you touched on it, Tom. You can use AI for simple transactions, whether it's voice, chat or email, and then it allows the agents to be able to deal with more complex inquiries. But most importantly, when you contact a contact center and you're initially being dealt with by AI across any one of those channels, it's really important that the handover to an agent when it gets complex is seamless, and that is what the Cirrus platform will do for you. It'll hand it over to an agent and it will be seamless.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point. Actually, it can't outstay its welcome with certain things. So you're right. The cutover point has got to be crystal clear, so that ultimately, I think people, it's still in its maybe not infancy. Maybe that's the wrong way of saying it, but it's still a fairly new technology. So you do have the people who don't believe in it or who get frustrated with it. People who just get frustrated with technology in general. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It needs to be really, really seamless to make sure that it enhances the customer experience, but doesn't degrade it if it outstays its welcome.
But if you put AI into your contact center and you use it, then you just need to keep reviewing it and making sure that the processes are correct, and it evolves as you as an organization evolves.
And if we take a slight step back from the contact center approach and focus back in on the data and the analytics, within the UK public sector, as well as obviously those with a formal contact center, Microsoft is a key technology stack that's seen fairly commonly across the board, and Microsoft Teams is often the chosen UCaaS platform of these organizations. Now, just because you have a formal contact center doesn't mean that data and analytics doesn't matter across users who aren't necessarily in that. Tom, what can we get out of Teams regarding sort of the analytics that we can see for those users that aren't necessarily contact center agents? We still need to know what they're doing, and we still need to know they're being productive, right?
Yeah, in terms of the actual data we can pull out, likelihood is very similar to what you would get from a contact center in terms of call analytics data, for example. So things like calls taken, calls dropped, calls ended, etc. That's the sort of data that we would pull from that side. Again, the contact center would handle everything like chat and all of that sort of side of it. But you're still able to get a good idea of, I guess, interactions and what has happened on that call, albeit maybe not as in-depth, but still a good idea of agent activity or user activity from the team's back end.
Nah, that's really good to hear. And obviously, data analytics doesn't stop at a contact center, right? It's important to have that kind of knowledge and the ability to visualize kind of what the business looks like on a wider scale. I'd like to take us back to one of the things that we mentioned just there before in terms of integrated services. Mm-hmm. Clearly, when we turn on the AI button, because it's nice and simple like that, we don't expect organizations to then, on that date, start creating knowledge bases where we can start, implementing AI. It doesn't start from day one, right? How can we use what customers may have already in terms of a knowledge base, and what's the benefit of that, I suppose?
So customers generally have a lot of knowledge in their platform. They just don't utilize it. So people have been recording calls for the past 15 years. So they've got a database with all these different calls happening across the organization. That used to be really difficult to transcribe and then to analyze that. Now it's a lot easier with AI and then technology improving. They've also got a vast amount of data in regards to email usage. They've got a vast amount of data in the CRM. So that data is already available. And one of the things that when you talk around going on an AI journey, you'll have what you call a chunker. Where you take all the processes, the data, the calls, and you chuck it in there, and the AI chunker will then pocket that up and really drill down as to what's important, and then it'll start feeding those processes in further down the line. So yeah, they may not have the processes and knowledge base there, but they have the data that can start building them out.
Well, I think we've had a fairly in-depth discussion there about the importance of data and analytics within your contact center space. There's a lot that we've alluded to a little bit in terms of what else you could do with your data. And that's something that I know for a fact we will be coming back to. But for now, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. This has been Gammabox, and we'll see you in the next one.